They say life begins in youth, but the truth is different. Real rebirth comes at 40. Here you'll discover why Jung claimed that everything before that was only a rehearsal. Stay until the end to understand how your inner revolution begins. For decades, society has repeated the same script. Youth as the peak of existence. Everything else, they say, is decline. The idea settles in that turning 40 marks a downfall, a reminder that the best is already behind you. This lie is repeated so often that it becomes embedded in the mind. But reality is far harsher and at the same time more liberating. Life does not begin in the years of obedience, when you chase titles, validation, or standards designed by others. Life begins when that structure starts to crack, when what was built with so much effort reveals itself as insufficient and hollow. Carl Jung understood this clearly. The first 40 years are merely a rehearsal, training to play a role that does not fully belong to us. We are taught to be students, professionals, parents, exemplary citizens, but rarely allowed to be ourselves. This social script is followed almost automatically because adapting is easier than confronting. Yet the weight of the masks accumulates. Sooner or later, a crack appears in the character, and it becomes clear that nothing done so far was truly one's own. From that point on, what once seemed sufficient begins to lose its shine. The success that was so fiercely pursued becomes repetitive and meaningless. Validation, which once provided security, no longer fills the void. What seemed solid crumbles like sand between the fingers. This is not a fall, it is an awakening. It is the sign that real life is about to begin. That moment brings a violent shock. Everything that once served as a reference loses value. Rewards lose importance. The world, which once seemed ordered, turns into a strange stage. Here the first great dilemma appears. Continue playing the same role until the end, or tear off the masks all at once and risk living without a script. Most cannot tolerate that vertigo and choose to sustain the lie. It feels safer to cling to routine, even if it is empty, than to face the abyss of authenticity. But those who dare to break from what is established discover something radical: freedom, the possibility of choosing another path, even if it means destroying what until yesterday seemed indestructible. This is the moment when it no longer matters how long you have walked in the wrong direction, because the option to turn still exists. There, in that rupture, begins what Jung called individuation, a brutal rebirth that demands stripping away what was borrowed and rebuilding from the deepest core. This rebirth is not comfortable. Tearing away layers of expectations and validation exposes an open wound. What appears first is not relief, but an unsettling emptiness. For years, identity was sustained by achievements, roles, and the gaze of others. When all of that is released, what remains is an uncomfortable silence. There is no manual, no formulas, no immediate answer, simply a vast space that forces confrontation with the hardest question: who are you without masks, roles, or applause? That emptiness is not an end, but a beginning. Jung stated it firmly: what is experienced is not destruction, but the opportunity to rebuild from zero. The silence, initially unbearable, becomes fertile ground where an authentic identity can emerge. This is not about repeating old strategies of success or replacing labels. It is about experimenting, taking risks, making mistakes, and starting again. Every step on that path is an act of courage. Most people never try. They prefer to keep the mask, even if it is false. They choose the refuge of the familiar over the vertigo of the unknown. Yet those who enter that darkness discover that the supposed safety of routine was an invisible prison. Authenticity hurts at first, but later it liberates, and that freedom cannot be bought or inherited. It is conquered by passing through fear. Individuation is a solitary journey. No one else can do it for you. No advice replaces experience. No models define the path. Each person must build their own way, and that is both the greatness and the brutality of the process. Superficial bonds collapse because they were sustained by a false self. Friendships based on convenience disappear. Relationships maintained only to fulfill a role wither away. This filtering is painful, but necessary. What remains is cleaner ground, where only those who resonate with the newly discovered authenticity stay. This is not about losing, but refining. What no longer fits dissolves, making space for what truly matters. Here begins a second stage of the journey, not only letting go of the false, but rebuilding from truth. It is not fast or easy, but it is the only path to a life worth living. Rebuilding from truth means facing a radical challenge, consciously deciding what kind of life you want to build. Until then, almost everything was conditioned by external expectations. Careers, partners, and goals were chosen according to what others deemed acceptable. Then comes the moment when choosing without borrowed scripts becomes possible. That freedom is powerful and terrifying. The fear of making mistakes deepens. When you follow paths laid out by others, there is always the excuse of obedience. But when the decision is yours, so is responsibility for every error. That weight paralyzes many, leaving them trapped in limbo. They no longer believe in their old life, but do not dare to begin a new one. They remain divided between authenticity and comfort. King understood that this process is uncomfortable and non-linear. It is a cycle of death and rebirth. Each step requires destroying the old to make room for the new. This is not a superficial change, but a collapse that forces passage through darkness before clarity appears. That darkness shows up as uncertainty, anxiety, and emptiness. Yet beyond it emerges something few ever experience: absolute freedom, independent of achievements, recognition, or validation. In this new stage, anxiety dissolves. The urgency to fit in disappears. The need for acceptance no longer drives every action. What appears is a different calm, a peace born from inner coherence. Life is no longer lived to meet standards, but to act from personal truth. It is the leap from merely existing to truly living. The process never ends at a final point. Individuation is an ongoing path. Each stage brings new masks to break and layers of identity to shed. What changes is awareness. Once someone awakens, they cannot fall asleep again. The illusion of ignorance is broken forever. From there, decisions no longer arise from fear, but from clarity. The environment changes because you have changed. Life becomes a continuous choice, not an automatic reaction. And even without applause or recognition, that external resistance only confirms the importance of the path. True life begins when the invisible chains of obedience are broken. This is not decline, it is inner revolution. What seemed like an ending reveals itself as an authentic beginning. Real life does not begin in youth, but when you decide to break from what was imposed and be reborn from your truth. Don't forget to subscribe, activate the notification bell, like the video, comment if you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for our next video.